Now, many of us have heard the idea that if a ship sails off course just a couple of degrees, by the time it gets a couple hundred miles down towards its destination, it literally might be miles and miles off course and never actually reach its intended destination. That's why we have compasses and GPSs. We have navigation tools that help keep us on course. Strategy is kind of like a navigation tool. It helps keep you on course. It helps you make decisions when you're trying to figure out what to do next in your ministry. That's why we spend a lot of time here at North Point thinking about our strategy for small groups. I'm going to explain our strategy for small groups here at North Point, and I'm going to break it down for you. Each section has some questions that we ask ourselves and answers to those questions, and also some principles that we follow. And we use it as a grid or a framework to evaluate what we're doing in our ministry. If something comes up and we're trying to figure out which direction to head, we kind of go back to our strategy and ask ourselves the questions that I'm going to share with you over and over and over to see what direction we should head. It also helps us if we're trying to implement a new part of our group's model, or if we're trying to observe something maybe that someone else has done and try to decide if it's right for us. Again, we'll go back to our strategy, we'll ask ourselves these questions and try to decide what's really the right course we should take. Now, if you go through these same questions for yourself, you're going to come up with different answers to the questions, and you're going to come up with maybe some different principles that you can follow, but it'll help you develop the best small group strategy for your context. So let's dive into the first component of our small group strategy, and that's our purpose for groups. Now, there's an author, his name's Simon Sinek, and he's written a great book and maybe even a better TED Talk called Start With Why. And Simon believes, and I think we do as well, that everybody can pretty much explain to you what they do. Some companies can even explain to you how they do it, but only the best organizations can explain why they do things. And those great organizations, they lead with their why every chance they get. And so that's really what we're looking for in our purpose for small groups. It's our why behind what we do. And we start with purpose first because it actually helps answer the rest of our components of our small group strategy for us as well. Again, it keeps us on course and it starts us off in that right direction. And we have two questions that we ask ourselves when we're talking about our purpose for small groups. And the first one is, why does our church have small groups? Well, we believe that people need to be connected relationally if they're going to grow spiritually. That's why groups serve as a cornerstone ministry for every environment we have at our church, from the preschoolers that start off in our church and then all the way up through high school and into adults. We believe that people need to be in those groups connected with each other if they're going to grow spiritually over time. Now, the second question we ask ourselves is, how is our strategy helping us accomplish our church's mission? And our church's mission is to inspire people to follow Jesus by engaging them in the life and the mission of our church. And so we're trying to figure out, how do we help people grow spiritually? And if we believe that people need to be in groups to grow spiritually, that would just make perfect sense as to why we would have everybody at our church in small groups. Now, your reason for having people in small groups could be completely different. You may be wanting to make your church, your big church, small, or you may be wanting to provide a way for people to serve together. All those reasons are great for reasons that you might have small groups. You just need to go back and ask these two questions for yourself and ask them honestly to yourself to figure out, why do you really want to have small groups? Because your answers to these questions are going to give you the best basis and the best start for your purpose for small groups. Now, to summarize, our principles in this area are our group life vision and our church's mission. Our group life vision is to connect people relationally so they can grow spiritually. And the mission of our church is to inspire people to follow Jesus by engaging them in the life and the mission of our church. Now, if there's anything that you take away from today, you'll want to remember that your best small group strategy will flow from your context. So go back and ask these questions to yourself and come up with the best, clearest purpose for your group's ministry. Now let's talk about the second component of your strategy. And this one may surprise you. It's actually a continuation of your purpose, and it's actually about communication too. And it's vision casting. Now, if any of you have been to Chick-fil-A recently, or even actually any time at all, this is the home of Christian chicken, you'll have remembered that if you say thank you to any of their employees, they're going to reply back with something that we all know. It's my pleasure, right? Well, that took them actually a long time to figure out how that organization could kind of go through that process and get everyone to say that. Now, I have the chance to work for Jeff Henderson, who was an ex-Chick-fil-A executive before he came to our churches, and he knew Truett Cathy personally. And he would tell us stories about when they were getting the employees used to saying my pleasure. And Truett would go over and he would say this time after time after time. And he actually said that it took him years of saying this before anybody actually caught on and started to repeat it. And so this important thing that you need to know about vision casting is that you need to do it often and you need to continually do it. You need to do it every time you do a training, every time you probably even send communication to your leaders. You need to be vision casting to them and explaining to them your purpose for small groups. If you don't continually do it, it won't stick for them and it won't be something that they kind of lead out of, which is really where you want them to be. Can you imagine how effective your small group ministry would be if the people of your church knew your purpose for small groups because they heard you vision casting around it just as much as when they would go to Chick-fil-A and they would expect somebody to reply with my pleasure? How great would that be if the people of your church knew that much about the vision that you had for small groups? So the question that we ask ourselves in this area is, am I regularly inspiring people towards our vision? If you regularly inspire people towards your vision, they're going to figure out how to get things done. They're going to figure out how to lead their groups and what curriculum to take and how to answer certain questions that come in your groups because they'll be inspired by the purpose behind your small groups. In fact, one of the tests that you can kind of give yourself is if you're constantly getting questions about how to do things in your group's world, it actually might be that you're not inspiring enough behind the why of your group. That's why we've also said that a key thing for us is that we believe that inspired people figure out how. If you inspire people enough behind the why of their small groups, they'll come up with great ways to do things. They'll also probably come up with ways that you never would have thought of, in ways that even might be more effective than the things that you thought would be great behind how you do your small groups. So again, our answer or our principle behind this question is inspired people figure out how. Okay, let's take a break after this. We've got 2 of the components of our small group strategy, and then we're going to come back in part 2 of this video and give you the last 3 components of your strategy.